you change the government, and it's often said you change the country. If the government changes this Saturday, and thanks to an effective Liberal campaign, it's now definitely an if under Scott Morrison rather than a when under his predecessor. If Labor are elected, the country will change in some ways that have been talked about, but in quite a few other ways that have hardly been mentioned or indeed have even been buried. Here's what we know. We know that retirees will lose their franking credits under Labor and end up effectively paying tax twice. Yet we also know those with their retirement savings in union super funds will still get the benefit of franking credits. We know that housing investors will lose out on capital gains tax and negative gearing under Labor. We know that higher income earners will face higher tax rates under Labor. And we know that Labor's climate change policies are, to quote the Business Council, economy wrecking, although Labor still won't even treat the voter with respect by telling them now, just days out from polling, what they will pay under Bill Shorten's new emissions reduction target, beyond saying that whatever it costs, it's worth it. We also know from Treasury figures that about 1 million retirees will lose $2,000 a year on average under Labor. And from the Real Estate Institute, we know that rents will go up about 10% and that house prices will further fall around 14% under Labor's housing tax changes. Naturally enough, Labor would prefer not to talk about the downsides of these policies, but at least the Shadow Treasurer, Chris Bowen, was honest enough to say, if you don't like them, don't vote for us. Fair enough. More and more people seem to be taking his advice and signalling that they'll be voting against Labor and for the Morrison government, as polls tell us again today that things are getting tighter and tighter. But quite apart from the dire economic consequences of voting Labor, there are some worrying social consequences too that have so far largely been ignored. There's Labor's plan to allow elderly parents of new migrants to come to Australia almost without restriction. As the demographer, Dr Bob Birrell, pointed out on this program last night, that's likely to mean at least 200,000 people, mostly from China, India and the Middle East, to come to Australia within the next few years on top of existing record levels of migration. Now, Labor has narrowcast this policy to certain seats with a high ethnic population in a naked attempt to buy votes, regardless of the impact on our overcrowded and already fast-changing capital cities and suburbs. And this is just the tip of the iceberg on immigration. We know Labor have already announced they'll double the humanitarian or refugee intake. They've refused to match the government's permanent migration caps, and you can't tell me that the moment Shorten's over the line, Penny Wong won't be on her way to the UN to sign off the global compact on migration that Australia and many other nations rejected as open borders by stealth. Then there's Labor's gender obsession. Read Labor's official national platform. It's up on their website, www.alp.org.au. And in Chapter 10 at paragraph 88, which you'll find on pages 213 and 214, you'll see commitments to set up a national gender centre to review gender on documents, including passports and birth certificates, as well as appoint a new Commissioner for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Intersex Issues. Now, there are indeed some justice issues here, I grant that, but they would already be captured under existing and very comprehensive anti-discrimination laws. No, this is not about preventing discrimination. Let's be clear, it's about promoting social engineering. Again, it's not something that Labor has broadcast, but it's another sign of just how different things would be with another stint of a Labor government that's enthralled to the Greens and the hard left. Given the significance of these measures to the sort of country we will be, remember, you change the government, you change the country, I believe these policies deserved a more transparent debate in this campaign. Indeed, the very absence of debate over the past 5 weeks shows how effectively the left control much of the media in this country, and partly too because the Liberals don't want to shift the campaign focus from economics, where they judge Labor is vulnerable. But mostly the silence on cultural issues comes from the fact that Labor doesn't want to let on just how much they want to change our country and how they plan to change it. Don't say you weren't warned. Or do as Chris Bowen says, if you don't like it, then don't vote for it.